Would such a world be recognizable as a human world? A world in which we had lost even, where we no longer cared even to ask the question, how to locate the line between the virtual and the real. And I think the deepest threat in human terms posed by the age of AI is that we will confuse virtual community and connection with the real thing. And that would represent a great loss.
How to fight with the trend or deal with the trend? It seems unstoppable.
You think it seems unstoppable?
It seems, yeah. I'm
and
not
why,
sure.
Well, it's worth asking, in figuring out how to stop it, it's worth asking why it seems unstoppable. Why do you think?
Because too less true debate and, discussion about it. Most people just follow the trend.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I could feel and believe the connection I have through my phone, scrolling and swiping and texting and posting, that connection to people half a world away is the same as valuable as my personal connections to family, friends, neighbors, classmates.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I don't know.
Or why would that represent a loss, I guess is what I'm asking. Why would that represent a loss?
I'm curious about you because, my phone.
Yeah.
It's the most intimate things we have. We touch
intimate.
Very intimate.
Right.
You spend more time with it. Yeah. And even through the social media, you talk with so many people. I think sometimes, even most time, because friends live in different places, we through it, but still feel kind of very intimate.
Yeah.
The similar with me.
Intimate.
Face to face.
Right.
So it's a new community. But I'm not so sure about it's less important than the more concrete communities before or the similar. I'm so confused about it. So how to understand it, the change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and let me ask you this question. Since we're talking about intimacy. Intimacy is an important aspect of this.
Yeah.
There are now AI-equipped devices, little robots, that you can buy. Let's say you have an aged parent or grandparent who's living alone, maybe in a nursing home, and who's lonely. And you visit them from time to time, but you can't be there every day. You can buy one of these robotic companions, and the robotic companion will carry on a conversation with your loved one, your grandmother, let's say. And let's suppose that your grandmother comes to regard that robotic AI-driven companion as a friend, as an actual friend, sharing intimacies, asking advice. And suppose that this relieves the loneliness of your grandmother and makes her happier. She considers this her friend. Would that bother you, or would you welcome that?
Welcome.
You would welcome it?
It doesn't bother me. Yeah.
It doesn't bother you at all?
Maybe not at all, maybe a little, but I accept it.
You would accept it, but what's the little that bothers?
Maybe just because it's a new thing and needs some time and space to understand it, accept it.
But if your this goes back to what we were discussing about the virtual and the actual and the real. Now, your grandmother no longer recognizes, we're assuming, the difference between a robotic friend and an actual friend. That doesn't bother you. Do you think there's a loss?
I think the new friend, the toy, is friend of her. Because some books are friends, even it's just papers.
Books.
Yeah.
So if the grandmother or if you or I were absorbed in a book.
Yeah, even we see some old books, it's like friends, yeah. It's spent maybe childhood years with you.
And, well, I agree that a book can be a friend and a source of, I would say, genuine companionship. But does it matter that when I'm reading a book and absorbed in a book, I'm engaged in a kind of exchange with, a kind of dialogue with the human author of that book? Whereas when your grandmother is spending her day conversing with the robot, she isn't.
We talk about Socrates, Plato, even it's 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Still can be your friend.
Yes.
So why not the toy?
Why not the toy?
Yeah, why not?
Because it's a machine.
Yeah.
Because.
But yeah.
Can it engage in dialogue? We've been talking a lot about dialogue.
Yeah.
Or put it this way, take a simple example, when we've...
Maybe the toy speak like Socrates. So many information about Socrates.
Right.
Thoughts.
Right.
In the toy.
Like a chatbot.
Yeah,
A Socratic chatbot.
Yeah. We can imagine Socrates from the books, from his dialogue.
Yeah.
From the books.
Yes.
Maybe she can imagine something similar from the toy.
Yes.
The toy is like different books. Because the books is much more sophisticated than we think. Even a book, it's more different layers. Maybe we just can touch it, maybe several layers, but more layers we still can't touch.
Maybe. If the toy becomes a sophisticated chatbot that is programmed on Socrates or Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Suppose your grandmother passes away, but she has left all of her digital data, all of her emails, all of her social media, recording of her experiences, and created a digital avatar using machine learning so that you're mourning the loss of your loved one, but you can still carry on conversations with her, and so can your children, and so can their children with their great-great-grandmother, and ask her advice, can introduce her to a new boyfriend or girlfriend, ask her opinion. Now, in principle, machine learning, AI-generated chatbots, as they become perfected, could provide a kind of virtual immortality, in which case the line that's being blurred is not only between the virtual and the actual, but between living and not living. What about that? Would you want to speak to the virtual digital avatar of your great-grandmother?
Maybe I will, I guess. I would. Because because in those days we see picture of them.
Yeah?
Their letters.
Photo. Read their letters and remember them.
Yeah, it's still kind of dialogue. with the photo, with the letters. Yeah.
It is a kind of dialogue.
Yeah, it's become a new, complicated, and a more rich photo and letters. Yeah.
So so virtual immortality, you would welcome virtual immortality.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I think I will. It's like maybe about books, the bookshelf.
Yeah.
Around your room, you
Yeah.
can see different names.
Yeah.
Maybe the AI, the robot, the virtual reality. Maybe it's kind of new thing of like books. It's grandma, grandparents, yeah, friends. But
in that case, would we no longer grieve or feel sad when someone dies, a loved one dies?
Sure, we have.
But why? If we can continue to know them and speak to them and be with them, then why should we even grieve their passing?
But I think we still can see the very thin line of the different part. That's still a line.
The thin line.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I think.
And if we no longer could even find the line, would that be better? Or worse?
No, I don't think so.
It wouldn't be better.
I don't think so.
Because?
If we human beings can't feel loss, maybe part of us will disappear.
Yeah.
But some new part will emerge.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But loss is an interesting aspect of humanity. Your intuition that loss is somehow essential to being human.
You're defined by loss, yes, yeah.
By loss, which is connected to memory. Maybe this is another way of describing what would be lost if the line between the virtual and the real were altogether blurred. Well, so what can we do?
So, what's your choice? The same question. What's your choice?
I think there would be a loss.
Will you accept it? I mean,
but would I go to speak to the virtual avatar of my grandmother? Maybe as a curiosity to see how the machine worked, but not thinking that this was being in the presence of my grandmother. In fact, the idea of human presence and why it matters is one of the most important questions posed by new technologies and AI. It's another way of asking the questions we've been discussing just now. What is there about human presence that matters? I've thought about this in connection with teaching because, as you know, we did an experiment some years ago and filmed and put the justice class online.
Yeah.
And we did it as an experiment. We did it to show that higher education should be a public resource, not just a private privilege. We had no idea what would come of it. We certainly didn't imagine that tens of millions of people would want to watch it, which is what happened, to watch lectures about philosophy. But it did raise the question then about what am I doing here in Sanders Theater at Harvard? If people can watch online, is there a difference between attending a class or a discussion or a dialogue virtually, online, and in person. And now it may depend on the subject. Some of my colleagues have made attendance at their lectures optional if they have video recorded ones. They say, well, you can watch it and get the content. You can learn the information from the lecture. Sitting at home in your pajamas in bed, as well as sitting in the classroom. I don't see it that way, at least for my subject, because being here, sitting here and listening and engaging and wondering and puzzling and laughing and responding, I see that as something that is very difficult to replicate digitally. And yet, I'm interested in doing more and more experiments to see if we can create platforms for public discourse and dialogue, including global public discourse. I think we should explore that, in part because if we don't do it deliberately, then this entire technological apparatus and social media will simply be what we have today, which is a highly polarizing, mind-numbing, commercially driven form of communication that takes us further and further away from a healthy civic life. So I want to do experiments to create platforms for global discussion. Using the internet, using new technologies. But I don't think it will ever be possible fully to replace the human presence that learning at its best and dialogue at its best requires. But do you think that's just a traditional old-fashioned view, maybe?
I agree. I totally
you agree with that?
But but it's paradox because you mentioned in a classroom, in a theater.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in one interview said, in Beijing, a taxi driver told you he watched your video.
He told a colleague of mine.
Yeah. You know, maybe for the Beijing taxi driver, for that moment, even very long distance from here, but he feel so intimate with your point of view, maybe more than the student here. Maybe. Yeah.
Well, this was a thrilling, when I heard this story, that a Beijing taxi driver had been watching my lectures on justice. And he said his family was watching with him. This, for me, this single story was a reward, one of the greatest rewards I've experienced since we did this project. And so I think it's important to use technology to open access and to promote discussion and learning and mutual learning, and to try to go further to create back and forth dialogue, not just diffusing material, but enabling people to discuss across great distances. And yet, if that were all there was to human connection, then I think we would lose something. I think we would lose something. In fact, I would go further. I think part of what makes watching justice online compelling for that taxi driver in Beijing or anyone else is that what they are watching is not just me standing giving a lecture. They are watching actual engagement in person. And that's part of what makes it compelling.
Yeah,
I think.
Right. You're quite right.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Quite right.
Yeah. Even though it holds about 1,000 people, it feels intimate Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's banked, and people who are speaking can see one another. And it feels intimate. It feels like a seminar almost.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
What kind of role the intimacy played in the thinking? I mean, in the debating. I mean, how important it is.
It's very important because it allows for dialogue. What the intimacy creates is a sense of community and gradually building trust, where people can disagree with one another, but still with civility and mutual respect, and learn together. That's really the idea, to learn together. I'll put a question to students, and it's a kind of journey together. But there's no guarantee that the student who raises her hand or his hand will offer the argument or the idea that I'm expecting. Sometimes the unexpected can lead in very interesting directions. Other times,
sometimes like chaos.
Well, yeah, sometimes chaos to emerge.
So which part is most difficult? I mean, it's a journey. Sometimes journey is boring. Sometimes journey is very exciting. Sometimes dangerous.
Yes. Well, the most dangerous, that's the easier part to answer. The most dangerous moments, but in some ways the most important moments, are the ones where the questions we're discussing come closest to the personal feelings and convictions of students. And those are the dangerous moments, but they can also be the most revealing and clarifying moments. What I try to do when I teach is to bring philosophy down to earth, to show students how they have a stake in what famous philosophers of the past have written. Philosophy does not only reside in the heavens, far beyond the world in which we live. It inhabits the city. It informs our everyday life.
人家那个我们俩那应该背景特别好看嘛，应该是。我回去好好练练英文，我英文不行。
你昨天不是刚说过不练了吗？就专注自己的事儿吗？
就今天可能觉得练英文也是自己的事儿。
突然在舞台上，我变成那个被他追问的人，那一刻你突然意识到，当你被追问的时候，才是你的思考真正打开的时候。你会被迫调动起你所有的感受去回答他的问题，而且是那种更精确式的询问，你不可逃避式的询问。因为我觉得我总是经常在拐弯抹角地逃避一些事情。我们刚做这个13幺节目的时候，陈嘉映老师7、8年前跟我说，他希望我去读哲学书，我一直就没好好读过。这次在哈佛，我真正产生出 想去好好读读哲学书的冲动。那现在我也觉得桑德尔在埋各种各样的种子，这些种子也肯定在某一个时刻破土而出的了。
How is it possible to combine the benefits of market arrangements and technological innovations with sources of meaning, deliberation, dialogue, reflection that can answer to higher human purposes and ends? Our mistake is not to use markets to organize economic activities. Our mistake is not to hope that technological innovations will deliver real improvements to the way we live our lives. Our mistake is the tendency to think that markets and technology by themselves can define human purposes and ends. They can't. And when we put too much faith in them, when they become a kind of faith, almost a kind of religious faith, markets and technology, then we're bound to be disappointed. And when the disappointment comes, the disappointment may take harsh, dangerous forms.
So the situation is so complicated. What kind of solution we can provide? We try to build dialogue, but very difficult.
I think we need to focus less on arming people for meritocratic competition and focus more on contending with inequalities of income and wealth, but also inequalities of honor, recognition, and esteem. And this means we have to renew the dignity of work. We have to broaden our conception about what counts as a valuable contribution to the common good. And we need the kind of class-mixing institutions in civil society that will lead us to encounter one another, to be in one another's presence, not only on our phones, all the more so when our societies are divided and polarized, because the people we encounter tend to be people only like ourselves. We need to overcome that.
But every solution, every theory always has its own flaw.
Yeah.
So how about your solution? Your attack the meritocracy, but maybe your theory, your book still has kind of flaw. Maybe you must overcome what kind of flaw it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what flaws have you identified? Let's start with that.
I don't know. Maybe too idealistic.
Too idealistic?
Yeah.
You think so?
I don't know.
So what I've just suggested is really too much to hope for. I don't think that reducing inequality and renewing the dignity of work and creating a greater equality of condition and recognition will happen anytime soon. They're not easy projects to undertake. So I want to be realistic about that.
But do you think, should philosophy be more responsible for the historical consequence or not? The idea and the reality, Russell, Hegel.
Yeah.
They talk about inequality, talk about the virtue, but the consequence may be this one.
Yes.
Yeah, extreme opposite.
Yes.
How to see the paradox?
If one thinks, and I, as I do, that philosophy is always situated in the world, that philosophy should attend to the world, then philosophy cannot be indifferent, and the philosopher cannot be indifferent to the way in which various people or parties or movements implement philosophical ideas.